Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham. Somewhere between the psychedelic 60s and the arrival of punk in the late 70s, Detroit had a unique imprint on American music with an avant-garde noise rock scene. Destroy All Monsters was an influential band and art collective at the time. The group formed in Ann Arbor in the early 70s. Its members were Cary Loren, Mike Kelly, Jim Shaw and Niagra. Later on, members of the Stooges and MC5 would join the group. The group's influence is being recognized with a 50-year retrospective of Destroy All Monsters called Mystic Chaos. It's on display at Cranbrook Art Museum with a sister exhibition curated by Cary Loren, also on display at the Detroit Public Library main branch. Both are open through March. The Metro's David Leins spoke with one of the founders of Destroy All Monsters, Cary Loren, about the group's origins and what to expect from the exhibitions.
Dirty tramp, walking the street. Deadly lady, she's not very sweet. I want to.
Tell me a little bit about Destroy All Monsters music. I mean, you've brought some CDs for me. We can play one of these songs, but tell me a little bit about the music itself.
Well, I think we were coming from these different directions, too. I was kind of writing music and writing words and kind of downer, gothic type lyrics. And Mike was very much into making tape loops and exploring electronic noise from children. I think he learned a lot from the Chicago Art Ensemble, the way that they were making sound and things. And so amplifying these little tiny, small things into huge explosions and, ripping out sound boxes from toys became like a passion for Mike. And then, hot wiring, he was really good at hot wiring these to, cords and plugging them into amplifiers so that they would, just sound huge and distorted. And Jim just could touch any instrument and make it like his own, So we got I remember we drove to Kmart and bought the cheapest guitar they had. And we also bought a used Echoplex, and that was basically his setup. And he treated the guitar like a John Cage instrument with clips and nuts and bolts, and playing it with forks and knives, and just would get these outrageous sounds out of broken down effects and things.
That's really neat, with the Echoplex and the Kmart guitar.
Well, this came together during I guess it was the summer of '74. I was living in Ann Arbor on Hill Street, and I had begun a kind of theater group there where we'd make films and have live theater, usually at midnight. And it was a thing where the audience would come in, we'd send out flyers, and we'd fill our apartment up with people from the street. And then sometimes they would be the actors in the films. And Mike and Jim came one day in the afternoon they knew Niagra. I guess they were in classes together. And she wasn't home, but we talked all afternoon about art, and we really kind of argued for several hours, and they told me they had a practice studio called God's Oasis and invited me there. And so we just started to meet at their place, and in the winter of '74, a friend who was living at another commune, Lincoln Yacko, invited us to play at the New Year's Eve party at this comic book convention. And so we didn't have a name, and at that party, Jim named the band Destroy All Monsters, and we started meeting all the time and practicing in their basement. And
So Jim, Mike, and Niagra, and yourself were Destroy All Monsters. Can you tell us a little bit about the other three folks who were in the group with you?
Mike was a wonderful artist then. I mean, he was doing these kind of a little bit cartoonish, caricaturish drawings, exaggerated, amazing pieces, sort of a very kind of Harry Hu school. And Jim also was really prolific, and he's the person that kind of decorated I think of him as kind of the spiritual father of this group.
Jim Shaw.
Jim Shaw. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was an amazing collector of debris and cast-offs.
And what about Niagara?
Niagara, I knew in high school and met her there, and I guess we became a couple, when I was a senior, I guess, and she introduced me to a lot of symbolism and a lot of stuff in art that I wasn't really looking at the time, and she was drawing kind of fairy tale and symbolist kind of paintings that were really colorful and bright and a little bit psychedelic as well.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm David Leins. I'm joined by Cary Loren. He's got an exhibition at Cranbrook on display now. Mythic Chaos, 50 years of Destroy All Monsters, and also at the same time a sister satellite exhibition at the Detroit Public Library main branch on the third floor, the pop culture area, called Noise, Vision, and Ruins, which has all this really cool posters, books, zines from several decades past, and there's a really interesting time that you can really feel through that. Let's stay in the library. So tell me about how the library actually was a formative part of your kind of artistic being. Yeah,
well, it was, I know it was before I could drive, because I would either hitchhike to the library or my mother would drop me off. And it was one of the only places I could find sheet music for classical guitar. And I was very interested in film at the time. I was shooting film in high school and middle school. And I learned about film through Film Culture, reading this magazine that was amazing. And it led me to an interest in Jack Smith and Warhol and other kind of avant-garde filmmakers.
And so you went to the library there to get your fix, to get inspiration and hang out. And I mean, it's a fantastic place to hang out.
Yeah.
Even the space that the exhibition, the installation is at right now. It's like there's that beautiful atrium with frescoes all on the walls, and then on the hallway there lining it are several display cases that you've packed with stuff.
Well, it's kind of my way of kind of maybe honoring the library and books in my life, and how it led me into art. And I felt that I wanted to exhibit about 100 books from the library's collection, which I found online, and I'd like to have a kind of conversation about those books and why they're important to me. So I included some of my own books that you can't find in the library to kind of converse with these other books. So it's kind of like an imaginary conversation of books and art and ephemera happening there.
And yeah, tell us about what's actually in this, because when you look at it, there's a bunch of colors, patterns, typography, a lot of paper-based media that's just kind of like, it seems like you could look for hours if you really knew what you're looking at. So tell us what's actually in this and how do you choose this stuff?
Well, I made a little brochure about that. It's sort of like a little travelogue, like you'd find at a rest stop or something. And it's just to give away a threefold kind of brochure. And it starts with sound, and there's sections on politics and culture and book culture and things of interest to myself.
And tell us about yourself and your interest. I mean, what era are we talking about? Because
I think my awareness of all this happened in the 60s. So it's really steeped in the culture of Detroit at that time, which I learned about probably later because through a friendship with John Sinclair, Lenny Sinclair. I did a book called Motor City Underground that kind of explains what was happening here beginning in the late 50s, early 60s.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I remember looking at those cases as you were assembling them, and there's Iggy Pop, there's the
Sure.
MC5, there's also a whole lot of stuff that I have never imagined. Seems like very obscure, hard to find, probably doesn't exist anywhere except for right there.
Could be.
Or maybe in other filing cabinets.
No,
and
I'm a
places.
sort of a pack rat of ephemera and zines. I make zines, and that was kind of my early kind of art making, was both filmmaking and zine making.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it shows in the trifold you have here. Now, on this brochure, it's describing what's in Noise, Vision, and Ruin, which is at the library. It says local folklore. Tell me a little bit about this local folklore that's included in the
If you look at the
exhibition.
back of the brochure, there's a section called Pagan, Michigan, and there's a list of sites that I've been investigating for a long time, almost since childhood.
Let me read some of these because they're really piquing my interest. So we've got the UFO sightings from 1966, Swamp Gas and Dexter.
Yeah.
I've heard of that one.
Well, yeah, we did a whole album based around that.
As we pass Earth, which we know as planet M240, our
We have a Shrine of the Pines and the Magic Alphabet in Baldwin.
There's a table there that the builder who made this table was offered a couple $100,000 in the 1920s by Henry Ford, who wanted it, and he wouldn't sell it.
And the Snake Goddess of Belle-Isle. What's going on with the Snake Goddess of Belle-Isle?
Well, I think a lot of these are just kind of legends that have come up.
This really helps to put into perspective what I've seen of both of these exhibitions and photos, because there are these elements of symbolism and folklore and mythos,
Sure, yeah.
and there's also like zines and print and posters, and there's sound and music and all this stuff kind of like thrown together, but in a way that's kind of like the story you would tell to someone if you had a lot of time to tell them.
It's very organized, I think, at Cranbrook because it was curated, and I didn't have a tremendous amount of say in what was going on there. I think they were very careful about it, and I mean, Cranbrook has a reputation for doing things, in a meticulous way. And they were very careful, but it's a very chaotic. Still, I think you could sense the explosive nature of what we were doing in that show. And I tried to keep it kind of period. And there's different sections. They have like a hive mind as you enter, which is our influences. And then as you walk through, there's more of the God's Oasis stuff, which I'm documenting in photographs. And then there's collages on the wall from that period. And there's some, I think they're drawings of Mike Kelly and a beautiful painting of Jim's from that period, maybe even from high school. I feel like we were accomplished artists at that moment. I mean, in time. I don't think anything had changed, but when we came together, we knew about art history. We knew all the fundamentals. We were kind of already practicing whatever our art was at the time.
I mean, it's really cool when you can kind of take something out of, whether it's the archives, a bin, a shelf that you may have forgotten about. Maybe you glance at it regularly, but now you've put it in this new place, a new space, and now you got to reinterpret it. And to do that with a kind of a collection of stuff from yourself and three people that you work so closely with, what is it like seeing it in this different presentation?
What I thought of, too, and a friend of mine always used to say this, is that DAM was actually there's four different histories to it, and which is very true. And I think that some of this display shows that these different directions that are pulling each other, closer and apart at the same time. So I think there are elements of it. There's films of mine that were re-scanned over at USC, I think, by an archivist there, and they're really beautiful. I never saw my films look this good, and so they're edited by one of the people there.
I want to talk a little bit about the era that most of this stuff was produced in, kind of like what the influences are in art at the time. Because it's been described, at least the Cranbrook exhibition's kind of this era of kind of after the hippie era, but before the punk era completely comes in. Is that an accurate way to describe it?
It kind of is, I think.
How would you put it?
Well, I think we were in the beginnings of punk. I mean, we knew of like the Modern Lovers were playing in 74, 75, I believe, the Ramones, and there was a kind of New York attitude at the time. I think the Midwest was kind of overlooked quite a bit, but a lot of the big bands that we grew up with, like the Stooges, the MC5, had broken apart, and that would later merge into Destroy All Monsters in around 77 or so. But during this kind of noise era, we didn't really have very many models to look at, but we were interested in avant-garde music, the Velvet Underground. Captain Beefheart was another kind of touchstone. And, we also had different likes, and it came together in an odd way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's something kind of bold and radical about it. Just when you look at all these different pieces together, there's attitude there, right?
I think, yeah.
Was that a kind of representation of a broader scene or artist movement in Detroit?
Yes, I think definitely we were reflecting on our predecessors, and by that I mean John Sinclair, Guitar Army. These things were kind of relevant to us in a way, and it was a thing that we both kind of learned about culture, I think, through the White Panther Party and through the kind of radical culture of the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And we were lucky to be here.
So you've got two exhibitions. They're concurrently running, and one of them is curated by the folks at Cranbrook. Another one is curated and installed by yourself, and that's at the Detroit Public Library main branch, of course. Give me one artifact or object or thing from those that you think people should make a point to go and see.
Well, there's one really beautiful thing that's kind of up front. I'm thinking of the book Ganawa that was edited by Ira Cohen, who became a friend of mine, and it also contains some work by Jack Smith, who was my mentor. It's a book that kind of became famous because it's on the cover of one of Dylan's albums, and it's about a lot of what they were doing in the Middle East, in Morocco at the time, and making rice paper books in Kathmandu. And he was working with Angus MacLeese, who was formerly of the first drummer of the Velvet Underground.
Okay.
Well, the Velvet Underground was kind of a common thing we all loved, and I felt like our band was kind of doing sort of a similar kind of jam around noise and sort of containing it too at the same time. It's like this push-pull thing. Mike used to think of the band as a work of sculpture, he said, and that's one thing in the Cranbrook show. There is a stage set up that we tried to emulate what God's Oasis looked like, with their mess of instruments and sprawling across the floor, and Mike's squeeze toys and on a baby blanket.
And what was God's Oasis?
God's Oasis was the house where we played in and practiced and met and watched old movies and horror films and
that was the
cable
creation
TV.
zone.
Yeah,
That was it.
Am I in heaven or am I in hell? I see your body and I don't feel so well.
Cary Loren is a founding member of Destroy All Monsters and is the owner of the Book Beat in Oak Park. He curated Noise, Vision, and Ruins, on display now in the music and pop culture section of the Detroit Public Library main branch. And that's paired with an exhibition at the Cranbrook Art Museum called Mythic Chaos, 50 Years of Destroy All Monsters. Both are on display until March. This is The Metro. And don't forget, you can listen to the Metro podcast. Every conversation we have on the Metro is available on the Metro's podcast. You can find it on Apple Music, Spotify, and WDET.org. Follow, subscribe, and leave us a rating or review. Coming up, Cary Jr. II tries to get to the bottom of the urban legend that the Masonic Temple is haunted. We'll find out more. You all stay right there. This is the Metro.